right, welcome to another episode of The Diplomat. I'm here with Audacious Hand, and we are to discuss the wonderfully intriguing developments of fall 1903 in the season 5 of Nexus Finals. As always, we are sponsored by diplomacybriefing.com, where you can keep up on all the latest diplomacy news by subscribing for free to diplomacybriefing.com. I'm here with Audacious Hand, who is, we usually do these at night, but this dude wanted to go right away and talk about the fall 1903, talk about what's going on. So, Audacious, you have thoughts? Give them to us, and I'll take you wherever you want to lead us.
Okay, give me one moment to move away from all my pets that are harassing me. Okay. Let's do it here. That's comfy. Okay, yeah, so there's so much going on here, so many interesting things. But what I wanted to lead with is actually, I would say I just want to do a profound reevaluation of Austria's play. I would say that what I appreciate most in a diplomacy player's ways is a sense of style. And I feel like this is one of those situations in which I had not grasped the patterns, the symmetries and asymmetries that make up Austria's particular style. So I kind of have
he's asymmetrical.
Mm-hmm. But I'm starting to see continuities in what he's doing, and I really think that I'm increasingly confident with my assessment that went against all the other commentators here that Austria probably is the best chance to take this game. So I mean, just we can begin with this move and the mystery, right? The mystery is why did Austria move to Apulia?
Yeah, well, let's just set it up. Austria had moved against Italy, convoyed an army onto the boot of Italy, had seemingly got it together with Turkey, where there was an AT, large A, small T, and then all of a sudden turns it around here. So yeah, first we see the Naples moves out of Apulia, which he could have held.
Right. So what I'm seeing is a kind of pattern in which I think that I think he's really playing the style that is perhaps the best suited to this type of game, in which he does have these kind of deep levels of cooperation with his allies at times, but at the same time, I think the crux of his style is leverage, right? So in that sense, you can see a kind of continuity in his play going back to the kind of opening moves where he lets Italy actually have Trieste. And if you recall at the time, I mean, we all assumed it was a key Lepanto, but there was that nuance that Italy actually went to convoy the army into Tunisia, and that they didn't push the army through into Serbia. That's right. There you go. I mean, we can see there. So yeah, they held the army in Trieste. But what's interesting here is that rather than flinging Italy forward, in which Italy is put in this proactive place where he'll actually gain from an attack on Turkey, he's kind of giving Italy a concession, but one that can be taken away. So Trieste can just be taken at will, right? And if you go forward a season or two, you'll see that once Italy goes west, right? So what would happen with Italy going west is that it's a slowdown of the Lepanto. So Italy's trying to slow down the Lepanto, jump onto France, and reap the rewards there, right? And so what I interpret Austria's subsequent attack on Italy as being is a kind of disciplining of Italy, right? He's saying, no, you will not go west at my expense. You are forced to come back and do this Lepanto with Russia and I, right? So then we kind of move forward to this past spring 1903. Right, he takes Trieste back. That was, he says, well, Italy, you must be disciplined for going against, the kind of spirit of the Lepanto. Not only that, but look at the tactical brilliance of the convoy straight into Naples, right? And if you guys recall, and we'll talk about this at the end, but England and Germany have really upped their game tactically since their initial kind of bungling of the attack on France. But the brilliance here is, if you recall, when I was critiquing the initial English-German attack on France, I was talking about folds or layers of thinking and anticipating what your opponent is going to do, right? And often, when you're going as higher level players, often, it will take people a few moves to realize, oh, I'm actually facing a person who is also trying to anticipate what I'm doing. So you got to jump on them with, a proper level of folds in the thinking. So
in war, the enemy gets a vote.
I suppose so.
Yeah, my point is that the battle doesn't start till shots get fired, and I don't think they were prepared for shots to be fired by Doc originally.
Right. Well, just because I want to focus on this archaeology of Austria here, in the context of this move to Naples, you'll see that. So if you look at Italy's move here, right? Italy is moving in a very optimal way. Like I would have drawn this out as well, right? I saw this move coming because Italy is moving as if Austria thinks that he's going to cover all his centers, right? As if Austria thinks Italy is going to cover up his centers. Austria looks at that and he says, so he's going to move in the way that a rational player would move if I was going to anticipate that he was going to cover my centers. So Italy is thinking in one fold, Austria is thinking in two folds here, right? And that shows that the fact that this is the first real kind of sparring between them, and Austria already thinks of Italy as a one fold, whereas Italy doesn't, assume that there's this kind of multi-layered thinking, really speaks to like some tactical brilliance on Austria's part. But instead of just taking that center from Italy, right, he moves to Apulia. So if we go forward, right, look what he does here, right? It really harkens back to what he's been doing with Russia and to a lesser extent Turkey. He's almost like disciplining his dogs, right? And Russia's been a very, very good dog. And even look right down to the kind of gunboat signal of supporting him in Bulgaria. Turkey's kind of been a bad dog. He moved to Constantinople. He's giving Italy a chance here. He's so kind to move into Apulia, but he still now has that kind of chokehold on Italy, right?
He can take Venice. He can take Venice whenever he wants.
Yeah, he can take Venice wherever he wants. Apulia is, many of these powers have that one or two tiles where if you hold them, you just have them in a chokehold, right? Gascony for France, York for for England, and Apulia for Italy. It's that one tile that can access all your home centers. And so not only that, but if you look at what he's done here, is he's also he's a great ally to Russia, but Russia never seems to be able to progress. He never seems to be able to get a build, right? And look what he's done to Italy. So now,
well, he's going to get a build now.
So this is what I think he's going to do. I think that's going to be a Lepanto, and here's why. If Italy doesn't agree to convoy him to Syria, then Italy keeps the army keeps that Austrian leverage over him with that army in Apulia that can always retreat and slide around between your home centers. And if he does convoy him to Syria, it's all the benefits of the Lepanto against Turkey, except who benefits from the Lepanto now?
Austria.
Austria. Yeah, Austria is going to benefit from the partitioning of Turkey. That problem we talked about originally about there's only three centers to go around and there's three powers in the attack. It's the exact same thing that he's done with Russia, right? Look what he's doing with Russia against Germany. The move from Vienna to Bohemia, it always seems so radical, and it kind of is. It's a little bit rare for Austria to move against Germany, especially like this early. Um, and it seems like he's a great friend to Russia, but do you see any prospects for Russia to get a build against Germany, really? It's possible that
No.
they have a triple alliance with France, but to me, it seems like he's helping Russia, and Russia will benefit not. So it's really like masterful through this kind of game of kind of leverage, slowing other people down while you just creep and get one dot by one dot. He's really put himself into a great position. Um, and and as he remains this great friend to Russia, who is merciful and does not, he's merciful and he does not take Romania. He also lets Russia slowly overextend themselves. It's almost like a reservoir for centers for him, especially with EG so focused on putting a fleet in St. Petersburg because, one of the problems with attacking Russia is, again, you start to face the same problem. Like if an English army gets into St. Petersburg and like the Turks get into Sevastopol, you suddenly have competition for those centers. So, he has kind of this like impotent, broken, like Russia just as a reservoir behind him. So I just want to say, Austria, your opening, I didn't love it. It did take a lot of balls. Perhaps I could find a less, gendered term than that, but it took a lot of courage to do that. You took a lot of flack. But I'm starting to see what holds your style together, and I think it is really beautiful. So sorry for that
Okay.
super long rant, man.
Well, no. Okay, but like let's tease it out. Okay, there are 7 game years left. Russia is not dumb. Russia sees what the leverage Austria has. Turkey's not dumb. Italy's, unless this was all planned, which I doubt, Italy's not loving Austria. And I understand that Austria right now is a tough nut to crack given how all their units are. But I wouldn't be shocked to see the three of them get it together against Austria and say, we're tired of being the pawns to your queen on this chessboard.
I'm not so sure. So I do see what you mean there. Austria probably isn't loved, but what his entire he's a Machiavellian, right? If you can't be loved and feared, it is better to be feared. And he has that army in Apulia. And I think that Russia might even be part of this whole disciplining of Italy to get back on board with the Lepanto. Yeah, I'm not so sure. The problem with Russia is that he's so vulnerable now. I don't. I think that it's almost like he's just a kitten. He's a kitten sitting in Austria's lap at this point, right? Being stroked, and his neck could really be broken at any time, and he knows that. I will say too, there's kind of a little bit of character evaluation. As you know, I've played with Tom a few times, and one critique I would have of his game is that he's not vengeful enough. He's almost too forgiving. Like he would, I could always get him to forgive me over and over again for my transgressions, and sometimes to my own detriment. Like I wouldn't listen to his prudent advice because I knew that there was no consequences to me not listening to me. So, if I was Italy personally, I would file this away in my dungeon of resentment. Maybe not go against him immediately, but I would definitely be doing everything to ensure that I made an example of him and that I do not tolerate this kind of placing of leverage over me. But still, Italy's got to think hard, right? I mean, putting that army in Syria really just gets rid of that problem for him. So that's where I stand on that issue.
All right. I mean, well, Russia's going to get a rebuild here, so I have to think he's going to build in Warsaw.
Right. I mean, he could build in Moscow and try to hold St. Petersburg, but um, what I see here, well, okay, let's just call the archaeology of Austria's brilliance over, and then we can do a flyover of the north, because there's kind of a whole different set of conditions there. Um, I did find myself very, very frustrated with uh, the fact that England didn't move to the Norwegian Sea in the spring, and you can see why I was frustrated, because of the French move to the Northern Atlantic, and now there's a huge hole in your northwestern kind of theater. If you recall, Norway supported the North Sea, which is just bizarre. There was no threat from the North Sea. It's almost like a gunboat signal when you needlessly support another power's unit to signal that you want to work together, except it's almost like saying, I only have my own back, guys, you know? Like, it's bizarre. On the other hand, it does almost seem to indicate that there continues to be some level of mistrust between England and Germany, despite their very strong alliance. They've probably been the most consistent duo in this game. But it also signals that I guess they're fixated on putting a fleet in St. Petersburg. At this point, that's, I think, the best case scenario for Russia. I would be trying to appease probably England, saying, okay, you guys bring that force of three up to St. Petersburg and just take it. There's no threat of future expansion into Russia with that fleet. And it would actually be good in the sense that it gives France more time and space to recover, if he will ever recover.
Well, okay. Let's talk about the West for just a second, and then because I want to spend more time talking about Germany, but just the Western situation.
Yes.
On the Spring 1903 podcast, I argued for the convoy of Belgium to Brest to sort of prevent this precise problem that we are seeing, which is the support from Picardy got cut, allowing a retreat into Paris. What is England getting out of this relationship with Germany? The answer seems to me precisely nothing. Germany's now in Paris with the retreat in Burgundy. There's a 50-50 on what Spain does with Marseille or Portugal next year. Germany's getting a build.
Well,
so this is, I think, as much as you liked Austria's play in a more traditional way, without angering anybody other than Russia, who's of no threat at this point, and France, who's dying slowly, he's not angered England. He did what England wanted, and he's going to reap the benefits of this alliance. And England is now, was the Western flank, and suffers real problems.
I suppose I think that's a little bit of short-term thinking. So first of all, I just want to also give England and Germany props, or if it's one of them coming up for the moves, or if it's even more dangerous if they're actually, sandboxing together, looking over moves. The convoy into Picardy was exactly what I really wanted them to do when I initially critiqued them quite harshly. And in fact, it was even better, in the spring because France cannot rebuild that disband in Paris. And then this move is even more beautiful. I mean, the malicious support of Burgundy into Picardy is frankly brilliant. Do you see what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, no, I do see that, and it forced the correct.
And it forces the retreat.
it forces retreat. And of course, if the convoy had occurred from Belgium, they would have had to have covered that from Ruhr, and they wouldn't be in Burgundy. So I understand that they're in a better position,
Yeah.
but at some point in diplomacy, better position for one power at the expense of another leads to instability.
Right, but the thing is, I think you under. I remember when I was discussing English play, in that I think for England, um, some powers are you need to kind of expand gradually and eat away, and Germany and I think Russia are a little bit like that. But England, because of the kind of the way you can kind of spin your web of navies across the board, um, is it's really, for me at least, the way I like to play is you kind of have a series of crushing blows along the coast. Um, and I don't know if you recall, but I remember saying there's two G spots on the board, and it's Galatia and Gascony. And what I see coming here is probably a convoy, an English convoy into Gascony. And if that does manage to go through, or perhaps into Spain, you will see that will unlock Iberia and Brest fairly quickly, especially with Italy turned around again now. Um, and so there is something to be gained. And once England does get that foothold, if he gets that foothold in Iberia, um, very, very hard to unlock. There's also, I do find just the fact that he's keeping that navy in Norway bizarre. It's almost like he wants to keep it there so that he can kind of swoop down on Germany if necessary, or perhaps there is
Well, he
some.
wants St. Petersburg. I think, he's going to ask for German support. I mean, that's the unit he'll move. Of course, it
Right,
leaves him open.
right. But I mean, it could also be just a kind of plausibly deniable way to um, keep a fleet where it can move against Germany if needed. Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say that Germany is kind of the driving force behind this alliance. But I really do think that with the Mid-Atlantic, and if he lands kind of an army in Gascony or Spain, he could. It's getting to the point where he could get his slice of France quite readily. And
You
again,
think
I just want to give them.
Germany will suddenly become generous?
Well, I don't think Germany is. Germany seems like a good ally. He really helped Italy. He took a bit of a risk to have Italy support him into Tyrolia to keep Austria at bay. I mean, I don't really share your skepticism there. The only thing that would indicate is the kind of the caution in Scandinavia that they seem to have with each other. But they've been, as I've said before, when you have an ally that's willing to really plan with you, take risks, do some cool convoys, you've got to really think twice before you want to throw that away, because it really is a precious thing. It's not, and you put a lot of work into that relationship. Do you really want to start all over again and have to put into the work into another? In 1903, I'm not so sure. I think I could see that sticking. I could see uh, England getting his share of coastal provinces. Whether or not that works out for Germany, I'm not so sure. Um,
Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, if Germany goes 3 up, right now they're 2 up. I think you're going to see a big problem. I think we would be doing our listeners a disservice if we don't talk about Conk putting in the Discord finalist commentary a complete missive
mhm.
rant against Turkey. You've given sort of the other side of it, which I find super interesting. But Conk feels betrayed, and he's taken it publicly. Uh, What's your take on what he's doing? He's essentially, I mean, in the end, he calls him a greedy, short-sighted buffoon. And I know you don't agree with that, having heard your Austria rant.
Yeah, I have to say, I will, I find this particular letter much less compelling than his other messages in the public chat that are more uh, they're more
Yeah,
of
they're
like
prettier.
kind of a song. Right. So
In
I
the
find so this particular letter here and some of the other ones you flash, I find a little bit resentful and pedantic in a way that's not actually so compelling, especially for your fellow players. I did like his more kind of poetic speech making um, that he had going in the public chat, and especially in comparison, and he even alludes to this in his aforementioned poetic speech making. Just the kind of crass use of gifs. He is a pleasing writer,
well, hey, hang
and
on
it's
for a
nice to
second.
see that. On
Did
the other
Conk
hand,
bring?
though,
Hold
I
on,
have to say that Austria, huh?
hold on. Did Conk
What?
bring this on himself? Did Conk bring this on himself? He posted a picture over the weekend, which I don't have, of a sock puppet as his penis, uh, in an erect state. And do you think that might have put Ewok in a little, who's playing Austria, in a little regretful state? Or do you think Austria doesn't care about any of that?
Um, I don't. I don't think Austria. I think that Austria has taken the mantle for me for the most compelling player from Turkey. Turkey. The Ottomans had that beautiful disband and daring disband in Constantinople, which we interpreted as Austria being charmed and turned by. But now I think with my reevaluation of Austria's style and Austria's, I mean, look, if Austria convoys an army from Bulgaria to Naples, moves it to Apulia, and then convoys it back out to Syria, uh, you know, he's letting his game do the talking, as they say. And no amount of poetic language and speech making can undo my appreciation of that kind of play.
Okay, so it's
Um,
interesting what you say because 4 of the 7 competitors commented on Discord. Again, you know, Conk saying, maybe this will be okay for Austria. Village Idiot kind rubs it in Turkey a little bit, making fun of at how to put a conch in a box. And then Austria replies, "I'm sorry, conch. I'll say more about all of this after the game." I mean, they have private press. I mean, just for those of you who don't know, that all of this is being done in public is amazing. And even Doc Binder came in here. Never been a fan of one dot stabs. They rarely work out well. Of course, I'm losing this game, so why would anyone listen to me? I mean, just talk about the uniqueness of this. I mean, I've been following these finals for a while. For the competitors now to all be discussing the game outside the game with others.
it's not me being squeamish. I have no problem with crass humor, but I think that Conk was straying from what makes him a compelling personality. As I said in a previous podcast, you want to create a narrative that is so compelling that your opponents want to be protagonists in that narrative, which I don't think is going on with penis puppet imagery necessarily.
Has gone ahead. You can see Lady Razor's artwork, by the way, which I commend. It's on our website and it's also on Discord server. Uh, putting Conk in a tram and saying he's having turkey's teething troubles, which I thought was pretty funny. 10,000 words on why I'm harrowing my toys out of the pram, blah, 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 which I thought was funny. But then Conk goes on this poem, which I think you sort of liked. It said, okay, this is the
Mm-hmm.
better Conk.
Yes, so this is the better Conk. Humble plays like that, he just makes you so miserable and berates you. In fact, I remember I played with a player named Bunny, who was quite a challenge for me in season 3, and that's actually where I learned. Have you ever heard the term negging?
Yes.
So I actually learned that word not through the context of like feminist language, but rather by a fellow diplomacy player who was apparently negging me and kind of destroying my self-confidence with his berating. He himself told me that. But yeah, I don't think that that's the most the productive way to go. Um, I also have to say, I really, yeah, I mean, I think Kunk is letting himself be kind of cornered as a kind of a little bit of an abusive player. Especially as Austria meekly apologizes to him for stabbing him.
All right. Well, uh, we've had quite a long video, and my internet connection could be better. But where do we go from here? You think the convoy is going to go through?
I think so. If I was Italy, I would actually put the convoy through. But as I said, and this is a message to Tom, um, allow yourself to just feel the negative emotions and to bury them. Put the memory of what he's done into that dungeon of the resentment and bring it out later. You do need to show the board that you can't be treated like this, but for now it might be time just to get that army out if possible.
You're telling him to be Robert the Bruce in Braveheart. You're like the dad. It's a long game,
Mhm.
son. It's okay. It's okay if you sell out Braveheart for a while.
That said, I would also not leave Germany hanging. Germany helped you get to this point by blocking Austria out of Tyrolia. Um, you don't. I would either, my first choice would be I would try to broker a kind of a united front between you, France, and Germany. Germany might be willing to do that with Austria and Russia putting pressure. Um, and then you don't have to worry about your western flank. And you can kind of maybe expand at Austria's expense. If not, though, I would try to free up something to both keep in good standing with Germany and maybe get at least one center from the fall of France. Um, if England does manage to take Iberia too soon, you have the problem of England possibly entering the Western Mediterranean, and it's just kind of like England wearing, France's face as a mask, bringing the same problems from the West. So I see that going.
How much of this is Austria playing a balance of power game as a European?
It's a balance of power game, but more than that, it's really a form of kind of surveillance and disciplining. Um, I really frankly think that, I frankly think that he is probably using Turkey's move to Constantinople as a pretext for blocking Turkey out of Greece, as I imagine was promised to. I imagine Greece was promised to Turkey, and the idea was that Turkey was going to be Austria's, navy. Um, but yeah, so if you look at it, Russia continues his strategy of just showing his belly turn after turn. You kind of have Italy in a chokehold. Um, I imagine that he might even be saying, "Oh my God, the devious conch, he brainwashed me into doing this," and yet, these moves like slowed you down and are going to enable me to get the spoils from the attack on Anatolia, as I mentioned before.
Okay, last two questions here. One is there any argument for a fleet and keel as opposed to the army? Because Germany gets a build.
Um, well,
I don't see any unless he's gonna, move too early against England, but I assume it's an army.
it's hard for me to tell just because England and Germany, they seem to have really great communication. That malicious support, that malicious support into Picardy was just Again, it's another example of what I was saying about folds, right? They predicted that Burgundy would tap Picardy, which is what advanced players tend to do. They tap possible supports rather than support holding their units. So they have great communication, it seems, in brainstorming moves, but they don't seem to have the trust to leave themselves vulnerable to each other, as you can see in the kind of massive fleets around Scandinavia. So, with that kind of relationship, he could maybe excuse a fleet in Kiel, but I don't really see much need for it. Not to mention the fact that with an army in Kiel, you have a force of 3 against the Austro-Russian attack, so you can kind of move armies against the east.
Well, you
All
get
right, all right, Audacious Hand. Thanks for that commentary. As you can see, we've now gone to a nighttime landscape here. We've brought in Superstition. He had to come in and comment. Stitches, go for it. Tell us, you've heard what Audacious Hand had to say. Give us your impressions.
I don't know. I don't see Austria having that mentality of being a mastermind. I mean, you have to take a deal as it's given to you. So I would say that Russia's more than likely brokering all of this. It looks like a strong Austria-Russia alliance, and Austria is bailing him out by relieving pressure, so Germany cannot push Russia. He's going to be able to build in Moscow.
Isn't Russia bailing him out? Being on his eastern flank and taking care of the black the whole time? Like, what's Russia getting out of this deal?
Russia's getting a lot of security right now, and that's all it really needs. But yeah, it's kind of funny seeing ping pong happen with Austria going back and forth between Italy and Turkey, because it looks like it's going to swap the other way. But I don't know where Italy gets any growth after this, so it's still really good for Austria. Hopefully it has a strong Russian ally, because right now it's just making lots of enemies otherwise.
So, what do you see going on in the east?
I can't imagine Austria will actually attack Russia anytime soon after making enemies with everybody else. It just doesn't make sense. It just sounds like the strong alliance right now. It's just a matter of time before Italy and Turkey get taken out. It's going to be hard for them to work together in general. So I think it's in Italy's best interest to convoy it back against Turkey, but after that, they might have to work together, as odd as that alliance might be.
And your take on the West?
Yeah, West is pretty straightforward. I don't see England and Germany disbanding their alliance anytime soon. The powers on either side, Russia and France, are just way too experienced to let out of the respective theaters. They've already gotten rid of the Russian north, so all they have to do is worry about taking out France slowly, and hopefully they can divide things up. I think it's going to be stable for a while.
Your take on Conk going crazy?
Yeah, that looks less like diplomacy and more like a rant. And unfortunately, that can catalyze or solidify how people feel about you. And I don't think that's a great thing, because you always want to be open to moving forward with anybody, just like Italy is doing right now. So,
by the way, Lady Razor, I noticed that the word was throwing, not harrowing. I was reading it quickly, so I apologize for not reading your art correctly. All right. And predictions here in 03 before we get into Audacious Hand rebuttal.
Let's see. For builds?
Yeah, well, have you seen the builds go through?
Well,
Let's
Germany
do it this
has
way.
to build an army.
Here are the builds.
That's pretty I mean, Germany has to build an army for the most part. A fleet would just be not good. And then Army Moscow is very predictable just to protect STP. They'd have to commit fully to taking it. So yeah, that makes sense.
I'm
All
actually
right.
I'm somewhat surprised that he built in Moscow. I really thought that I mean, just given that it was 3 fleets, he would just, if they're going to move 3 fleets in, just let them put a fleet in St. Petersburg and put the army in Warsaw and move aggressively towards Germany. I don't see what the plan is in this attack against Germany. I mean, what do they?
Well, I think with the armies, it's definitely to keep Warsaw safe. Just that Bohemian army, in general, will keep it safe because it puts pressure on Munich. But you're right. STP is dead one way or the other. But making Germany leave Sweden makes them overextend a little bit more, and allows England to be tempted. So that's the only thing you can do is move Germany out of position and beg England to stab.
Well, I mean, if you built the army in Warsaw, you could still move to Livonia and fake them out. Like maybe they wouldn't move 3 fleets in thinking you weren't going to defend. You would at least have the element of surprise.
That's
Army
actually
in
a good point.
Yeah.
Because they can't. Well, actually, they could force it this turn though, if you didn't have support.
Yeah.
And then they would pivot out.
I also just think, I mean, if you are trying to turn England to your side, if you actually give England St. Petersburg with that fleet you really could. At that point, you're saying, well, there is no rational argument for you to continue against me.
Well, disbanding that fleet in general is everything to England. So
yeah, exactly. We'll see what happens there.
Audacious Dan, you really are not allowed to speak until you tell us if that's a fake fireplace or not.
It's a gas fireplace. I don't know what the line between fake and real is. I suppose
Wood.
Oh, okay, yes. It's a fake fireplace then. But it's not like a green screen or a or a television with a fire channel on. So there's different gradations of truth and lie,
All right, both of you. Conk was at it again today. He's all over Discord. I don't know what he's doing, but we got this latest post from this afternoon talking about cats in space from the French. And do we have any idea what he's doing here? Just trying to be humorous?
No idea. I don't know. It's Turkey. Not a lot of people like to talk to you, so maybe he's just venting.
I mean, I think the fact that it's inscrutable leads me to believe that maybe he is. I mean, I feel like you did this, Ed, in your game. Just that there's a kind of play of the inside jokes of the game that are then put before the public audience. Which kind of reinforces the fact that it's an inside joke and you have this relationship with people, like the fact that the others don't get it. So, I mean, he could have something in mind there, I suppose. But he's really going to be displeased with this episode because I will say, in spite of Stitch's, kind of, I would say perhaps overly moral kind of view of Austria's play, I really do think we have a new people's champ.
No.
I think we have a new people's champ. I've talked about fetish tiles, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to Tyrolia. I mean, if he has a Puglia, Tyrolia convoying back and forth across the Eastern Mediterranean with impunity, like I said earlier, he's letting the game do the talking, and that's the new people's champ. Sorry, Conk. And Conk senses that. That's why he's going crazy. The ties.
He knows the title. He knows his title's been taken.
Yep. Sorry, Con. Fuck.
Well, he
Who's
can
the
probably
who's
move
the
to
people's
Tyrol this
choice?
turn just because Munich's not going to move.
Who's the people's choice right now, Stitches?
No.
Conk, Austria, Doc Bender, or Russia?
I would agree that Austria is the people's choice just because it's the most entertaining to watch right now.
Yeah.
Not my
All right.
choice, but
I mean, he has an
definitely
army in Bohemia and Apulia, like in spring 1904. Like, come on, got to give it up.
and the Eastern Med.
Yeah.
It's definitely unique positionings.
Yeah.
All right. I know Hans got detailed thoughts on what the spring 04 move should be, but Superstition, you got any meta thoughts on what should happen next?
Well, if Germany and England are working together, they should do a double disband on France. That should be pretty easy. Germany probably needs to hold its armies just in case there's a coordinated attack versus Munich. I think the England and Germany need to push STP, get that under lock, get England its build finally so it can protect itself a little bit. And I think that Italian or Austrian army in Italy will be in Syria.
Do you agree with the
they'll have to
convoy
come
idea?
back.
You think that Italy has to take Audacious's hand and bury all the negativity and evil thoughts he has towards Austria and get back on side?
I think Tom's really good at that. He's really good at logically analyzing things. I mean, he was down to 2 centers and still wheeling and dealing with me when I played with him. So he does not stop playing until he's done. So I think that army's gone.
Just to correct you, I didn't say he should forgive him. I said that he should put the resentment into the dungeon and like let it fester like a fine wine. Like you don't just forgive.
Words to that effect. I didn't say forgive. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't mean. But you said bury it, or like you said. I mean, I agree. That's what you said.
Yes, you put it in the cellar like a nice bottle of wine, but filled with hatred instead.
Only to resurrect it later when Italy is going to become a big power on the board, and he's going to get his vengeance.
I'll leave anger to Conk. It's his style.
But I mean, look, why wouldn't Italy go for it, right? Because you get the army off the boot.
Yep.
No sense in doing anything else. All right, Cedric, you've given our listeners a little treat, something that Humble never did. You drew up a sandbox of what you think should happen in the spring of 1904.
Okay, first of all, I have to give credit to the Western move to Stitches. I mean, this was all drawn up very quickly. I've noticed that, I will say this is just my advice to maybe people who are listening. Take it for what it is. Who am I? But sometimes you do have to go with your gut. And some of the worst mistakes I've made have been overthinking things. But yeah, this Western move, that is all Stitches with the double disband. I actually had like a forcing a convoy into Gascony because I fetishize Gascony. It's kind of a problem. But as soon as I saw this, I realized Doc is in trouble here. This might be the end of France. Look at this. There are, a few kind of either.
Well, why wouldn't North Atlantic? It's a spring move. Why wouldn't North Atlantic cut MAO?
So, that is an open question. It might cut MAO. If it doesn't take Liverpool now, it risks not being able to in the fall. So there is that temptation to guarantee that build, and then hopefully you can act in some productive way from there.
MAO could go to Portugal. It could be brutal if Doc tried to cut MAO.
Well, so Portugal to me, I was saying
Fool's gold.
in 1901, I'd just say never put a fleet in Portugal. You're just taking it out of the action and risking disbands. Just the kind of the relative value between the Mid-Atlantic and Portugal, in spite of the supply center, I would value the Mid-Atlantic over it. There is an argument to be made for supporting MAO into Brest so they can't be cut.
You force the disband.
Mm-hmm.
That fleet needs to go.
Yeah, so that could happen. On the other hand, for me, if he were to cut the Mid-Atlantic, then he again might not be able to take Liverpool, and you'll still be able to take Brest in the fall. I think it's worth getting that just absolute game-ending position for France and trying to keep Mid-Atlantic.
You're not losing MAO either, though. I mean, you can get it back in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one could go either way. I think you're right. Yeah, I definitely see the argument there. But yeah, I mean, if they spend the time on this move and pull off some kind of variation of this double disband, I mean, the second that those words came out of your mouth, I was actually late to this podcast, just desperately sandboxing this and getting kind of like just strange like feelings of just pleasure and triumph, just even though it's not me playing. So there you go.
Do you think it's more important for Burgundy to move to Gascony than take Marseille?
I don't know if it's more important. I mean, there's a sense that
block the retreat. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose go to Marseille would definitely be a kind of multi-fold move. Like you can pretty much anticipate he won't go there. So I think going to Marseille would be a very good move as well, but I think going to Gascony has a higher payoff if you actually manage to take it, and also if you can stop him from moving into Gascony, which is a good defensive position for France because you can kind of guess right and block various centers. I think that's probably the move to make. What do you think, Stitches?
Yeah, I think blocking the retreat, getting that double disband is just amazing. It's worth it. It'd be I would say it'd be the move of the game, but I don't know. This random convoys in the east is still pretty cool.
Oh, I know. This would be quite a move overall, for sure. Honestly, I really did love that militia support into Picardy last turn, though. That might
That's a good one.
Yeah, I actually didn't see that when I glanced at the board, and that was beautiful.
Yeah, because I didn't think he'd tap it. I think he'd cover, but it didn't work that way.
A random trivia time. What's more important, Black Sea or North?
I mean, you can't answer that question. They're very different.
What power are you?
Just kidding. Yeah, exactly. If you're Austria, North. No, I mean the difference is North is more dynamic territory. Nice thing about the Black Sea is once you take it, it's very hard to get you out, and you can just sit there all game. It's your bridge. Yeah, it's a very good defensive position. I would say the North Sea is more of an offensive tile that you try to take it with the idea that you're going to convoy somewhere, in that constellation of centers around it.
All right. Do you agree that those? I would go with North, but would you agree with me that those are the two most important water tiles on the board?
I don't know. MAO is real strong.
Yeah.
Well, that was my next question. My second tier is MAO, English, Ionian, and Aegean. I put them all in the second category. Very important, but not as important as North and Black. Am I wrong?
I might put Mid-Atlantic as perhaps the most important.
Mid-Atlantic's most important. Controls the game, can stop a solo.
Yeah, if you're talking about the arc of the game itself, it's because you can stop. It's the stalemate line between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic, and it borders a lot of centers, and it kind of governs the relationships between England and France. But again, I mean, you'd have to define importance. There also are some really underrated tiles. You know how I fetishize the Baltic. I mean, another underrated tile, definitely the Gulf of Lyon, because you can get the convoy lines between England and France. Italy and France. It's just, yeah, everything's important in the right context.
So true. Okay. Any other thoughts on the season, fellas, before we wrap up?
Just really looking forward to seeing my prediction come true. I do think that this next season might be actually fairly exciting. I have to admit, for a finals game, this is starting to kind of develop some kind of, some enticing possibilities. I will say my prediction is that the people will be chanting and rallying for EVR rather than Conk by the end of this podcast.
Conk, it's looking really bad. I'm still rooting for you, brother. All right. Thanks, fellas.
What's your prediction?
For what?
I don't know. You were supposed to have final thoughts as well.
Final thoughts? I feel like it's feels like two different finals in one game. Like you have the stabby finals where everyone's trying to just jockey for position. Then you have this long-term alliance structural thing going on in the West. It's kind of neat to see which one's gonna work out. And then Village Idiot's doing his own slow, steady, methodical thing. So
yeah, I think it deserves 1 second because we're talking in the green room, so to speak, superstition. What do you think of Russia's play? I still think Russia's got a lot of opportunity here.
Still at 5. It might go down 1, but it's, like I said, it's with a fleet, and he's still going to be able to do a lot with what he's got, especially with an Austrian ally that's as powerful as Austria is right now.
I'm just over him. There's a reason why I have him retreating to Warsaw. Let's put it that way.
I don't see him retreating to Warsaw, but
I think a bounce in Prussia. I think a bounce in Prussia is more likely.
I think he'll
depending on if EVR still wants to keep stabbing or not, whether or not he drops down, or if he keeps pressure on Munich.
Why do you have Bohemia moving to Tyrolia? Just as a trick on Tom. This is all part of a trick.
Well, that's part of my kind of overarching philosophy of how I think Austria's style works. I think that he always wants his armies, his units, in the most strategically advantageous tile that gives him the most options. And so Tyrolia is that tile. He has even more leverage over Italy. He kind of is keeping Germany in check. And at this point in the game, I think Germany is probably, if in a vacuum, the most likely winner of the game. Though I think, again, Austria's style vaults him into that position. So yeah, I mean, if Tyrolia is kind of the leverage position between the central powers. Sometimes you actually move there in order to make peace with your neighbors, with your two fighting neighbors. Yeah, it just seems in character. It seems in character for him, just like Russia's retreat to Warsaw seems like in character for him.
If Russia doesn't need Bohemia, I can see it going to Tyrol. It's just a good spot.
Well, that would be brutal on Tom.
Yeah, I don't think Austria cares. It's just going to move back and forth, making deals.
Right, just slowing everyone down while he just kind of slowly expands.
Yeah, and they can't do anything but accept the deals.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is.
Well, if he wins, he wins, and so it's yet to be determined in my mind that he's going to win.
Still pretty aggressive play early on for a win, but we'll see.
Okay, guys. I think the biggest surprise here is that I don't have a tattoo compared to the two of you, but that's okay. I'll somehow manage to get along in life without a tattoo. But all right, somebody answer the home phone, which is embarrassing that you have one, and we're done.